As Ag Party Leader David Seymour, welcome to the program. Thanks for your time. Good vibes there in your electorate, but you don't always get the tone right, do you?
Oh, you give me an example and I'll respond.
Oh, OK, I'll give you an example. The Kerry Allen debate, snap debate that you called, you're widely criticised for that. Like Willie Jackson called it a jerk move, Greens called it shameful, Winston Peters called it shocking. Was it political point scoring without any empathy?
Not at all. The debate was about the state of the government, the fact that a minister had resigned. The Speaker awarded that debate because that's what happens when a minister resigns. The debate that I put forward was honourable and respectful of Kerry Allen and her personal circumstance. The criticism of
But it had a lot of Labor bashing in it as well. I did read your
Well, I think the Labor Party has done a huge amount of damage to New Zealand. We've got a country that is racked by inflation, lawlessness.
And I get all that, but do you need to make those points in a debate about a minister who's resigned over mental health issues and incoming charges? You could just make those political points like you normally do. Well,
actually, it's interesting because the criticism was of the government. It was Labor and the government that introduced mental health into the debate. They use that as a shield against criticisms of the government, and that I find actually quite disgraceful.
Because
so you're absolutely right that people made that criticism. I'm doing my job as an opposition MP, debating the direction of New Zealand and the needs that constituents have. It was Labor that decided to make it about mental health. It's you who was making it about mental health. This is a debate about the direction of New Zealand.
Yeah, but that debate was about the resignation of a minister who had resigned by the time that debate had happened.
Nominally, yes, and the circumstances in the government that have led to it, and the consequences for the government going forward, including the fact that they can't replace her, they can't field a full team. They are now a caretaker government incapable of solving the real problems.
So you're standing by that decision.
I'm absolutely standing by it for the reasons I've given.
Okay, all right. Let's move on. Let's talk health and sort of health policy. Maori live 7 years less than non-Maori. It's a given fact. So tell me what your plan is to reduce that.
Well, first of all, let's just put that fact in a little bit of context. You go back 70 years, there was actually a 20-year gap between Maori and non-Maori life expectancy in New Zealand. That means that in the last 70 years, the gap has closed by 13. Maori life expectancy has increased more than twice as rapidly as non-Maori life expectancy. And I think people forget that. I think often there's a lot of despondency. People forget the wider context.
But it shouldn't be that way now. We are a modern...
Second issue is, what do we do to continue closing that gap? Well, I would make the point that if we're going to have healthcare, it should be targeted based on the needs of people. I don't accept that the only way we can target healthcare assistance is by lazily racially profiling people, and there's two reasons why that's wrong.
Okay,
the first is that if you start saying that a person is first and foremost defined by their race, you miss things about them. You miss people who are Maori and perfectly healthy, thank you very much. You look at the implication of these Prezi cards being handed out to Maori expectant mothers. The implication is that mothers who are Maori need to be bribed to come in and check on their kid. That's wrong. It may be true in some cases, but it's also true in some cases of women who are not Maori.
These stats don't lie, though, do they? These stats do not lie.
Well, actually, they get misrepresented. And if you give me a second, the second way that you get it wrong is that actually there are non-Maori people who do have the need to have multiple comorbidities, but are also missed because your targeting is based on ethnicity. So while you're right, the stats don't lie, they miss two types of people: Maori people who don't need the help, and non-Maori people that do.
Let's take that back. But there is inequity in the delivery of the health systems. And say, I mean, you want to scrap Te Akawhaiora, the Maori Health Authority.
Of course.
But that is a way of targeting health delivery to reduce the inequity in service delivery, isn't it?
And as I'm explaining, Simon, when your lens for looking at inequality is a racially profiled lens, what you do is that you miss Maori people who don't need the help, you miss non-Maori people who do need the help. And so to answer your original question, we're getting to, is that actually there are better ways using good data to target true inequities. If your lens is a racial lens, then you will find racial inequality.
Self-determination and delivery of health services is the way to go. Why shouldn't they have self-determination?
They? Who's they?
Well, so we're talking about Maori at the moment, aren't we?
Oh, okay, all right. So you view people primarily as an ethnicity. I think that's wrong. The second reason that I was getting to, why it's wrong to use a racial lens and racially profile people, apart from the fact that it's inaccurate, you miss two types of people: Maori who don't need the help and non-Maori who do, it's that it's also divisive, because when you say a person is primarily an ethnicity, people get resentful. They get resentful when you look at them and you see only a feature that they can never change.
Right, and I'm going to talk about that in a sec.
Now, if you'd like to talk about how we deal with inequity, well, first of all, if there's going to be targeting, it should be based on need. It should be
and you've said that, and you have said it already.
And second of all, you talk about tiratanga, you talk about self-determination. Yeah. There is absolutely no reason why you shouldn't devolve and let community groups give service that works for their people.
Well, so that happens already. So what's wrong with that? That's part of the Māori health authority, isn't it?
Well, you don't need a separate authority. You don't need to divide the health system into just two. And let me give you an example.
I want to move on to this issue of
well, hang on a second. You've raised a really significant issue.
Yeah, I have. But also, it seems to me that this is an example of your whole sort of approach to race relations, and that is you don't believe in partnership. You don't believe in separate rights. That's right. That's correct, isn't it?
That's right.
But we are a signatory to the United Nations Declaration of Indigenous Peoples' Rights, and that recognises self-determination, doesn't it?
Well, I think that was a mistake. I think that whole declaration is wrong. And I'll tell you how we in New Zealand, I mean, first of all, the idea that New Zealand, you know, one of the most equitable, liberal, democratic countries in the history of humanity, should be dictated to by the United Nations, where everybody gets an equal vote, even though some of the people voting for these motions are people with the most grotesque human rights abuses there are. Yeah, I mean, let's throw that out.
Yeah, okay, but these rights have been recognised by courts, by previous governments. They're all entrenched in New Zealand society. They are recognised, and you're saying, let's get rid of that.
Well, you started this interview by arguing that they're not working. Our argument...
It's just if we accept... I'll just finish this point. If these are all accepted, and you're coming from this particular point of view, it's political opportunism in this election campaign, really, isn't it?
Not at all. And if you'd allow me to explain where we're coming from, you'll see that that's untrue. So if you look at the question of devolving services, ACT has been at the forefront of this. When we had nearly no political capital, what did we do? We created partnership schools, Kurahorua. What did partnership schools do? They allowed people from each community to put forward ideas to better engage kids in their community from their education.
So you do believe in partnership?
Do you think, Simon, we could just finish more than two sentences in a row?
All right, finish that thought.
And what we did was we said, actually, it's not just going to be people from iwi. There were certainly Maori partners to the Crown in that. There were also Pacific. There were also some that had no ethnic connection whatsoever. But the point was that we don't have a vision of New Zealand where there's tangata whenua and tangata tiriti, two types of New Zealanders. What we have is a vision where everyone has ngā tikanga katoa rite tahi, the same rights and duties. And that means that we can devolve to Pacific, we can devolve to Maori, we can devolve to people that don't have an ethnic profile whatsoever.
All right.
So you say that's political opportunism. That is cynical and wrong on your part. What we have is a vision where all New Zealanders have the same rights and duties, where services fit all people, and where we go together focused on our common humanity rather than dividing ourselves by the so-called partnership.
I understand that position, all right. So let's move on to...
So you would admit that that's not opportunistic?
I'm going to move on to the next section of the interview. That's what I'm going to do. Let's talk about tax, which is very important in this election. You have a two-level tax plan. Your tax plan will see those who earn the less pay more tax and those who earn the more pay less tax. That's correct.
Well, again, that's completely untrue.
That is true. On a 17.5% level, those who earn, like, you know, $10,000 are going to pay more tax.
Well, Simon, if you take the time, I mean, you can either read our alternative budget properly or let me describe it. Which one would you like?
OK. Is that true or not?
No.
OK, why is it not true?
Every single earner will end up better off under
That's because you're topping it up. You're going to be topping it up.
That's because you get a low and middle income tax credit. It's because you get a carbon tax dividend. So as a New Zealander earning money, you will keep more of your own money under ACT's alternative budget because we will stop the government waste. What's more, Simon, at almost every single income level, at 90% of income levels, there's a few wrinkles with every tax system, you will pay less tax if you earn an extra dollar. And that's what it's really about.
All right.
Is the values that you can make a difference in your own life.
Yeah, you are topping up the bottom levels to make it work, right? With as an offset that you're going to put in, and also your carbon tax credit, which is coming from the emissions trading scheme. Why are you using funds which are supposedly targeted for climate change initiatives to top up your tax policy?
Well, first of all, those climate change initiatives have been completely ineffective at reducing emissions. And I'll tell you why that is. If the initiatives that they were funding were the most efficient way to get less carbon in the air for the amount of money going in, people would already be doing it to save carbon credits. So every single dollar in that Climate Emergency Response Fund has been ineffective at reducing emissions.
And you want to scrap all of those?
What we say, yeah, that's right, because what we say is you will get about $200 a year back out of the emissions trading scheme. Now, if you make low carbon choices, then you keep that money, good on you. If you go and buy a V8,
so it's all about
then more of your money will go...
individual choice, right? You know,
well,
that's what you're saying.
If you go and buy a V8, then more of your money will go back into the ETS.
It seems you're about simple tax systems. It seems a bit complicated, doesn't it, to like tax the lower people more and then top them up with two sort of top-ups. It seems like red tape.
No, not at all. It's very simple. We have an emissions trading scheme. At the moment, the money is being given to businesses in the form of corporate welfare that's ineffective at reducing emissions. We say it should go to New Zealand families.
All right.
At the moment, every single person gets that 10.5% tax rate, even people earning $1 million. We say that we should stop that, have a 17.5% flat rate, and then people who are really hard up, a smaller number of people, they should get a credit. Why do you do that? Why do you do that? Because it allows you to have lower, flatter taxes at the top. So altogether, we go from 6 tax rates down to 2 tax rates. That is simpler, it's fairer, and everyone's better off.
Okay, let's talk about the sort of the wealth gap in New Zealand. Top 1% seemingly have about 20%, the bottom 50% have about 2%. Is that gap acceptable to you?
Yeah, it is. Because,
it is. Why is it acceptable to you?
Because you tell me what the gap should be, and do you want more wealthy people in New Zealand or less? If you want people to leave the country, take their wealth away, then go and vote for the Greens, go and vote for Te Pāti Māori, go and vote for Labour.
What about the people
they will put in place taxes that will chase wealth away. People that have done well won't want to be here. People that have done well overseas won't want to come here. We will all be poor as a result.
You're saying that voting for you is voting for maintaining that wealth gap between the top and the bottom?
No, I didn't say that at all.
Well, that seems to be the implication.
No, I said I don't resent people being successful. I don't want to put in place taxes like you're about to propose from the Greens and Te Pāti Māori to take money off. Well, I know that's probably your next question. I've followed the pattern of this interview.
No.
And, you know, if we want to have a culture of envy where the Green Party, for example, say it's only 0.7% of people that have this wealth, it's okay to take money off a small number of people, that culture won't work for us. What we want to do is to make success part of New Zealand's culture. We want to make housing more affordable by making it easier to build a house. We want the economy to grow. We want more high-paying jobs. We want more technology in areas like genetics.
All of those. Everybody wants that.
That's what. Well, actually, we are the only ones that have set out how you do it in considerable detail.